Hello again. The subject of reparations for slavery and the slave trade is now being actively discussed at the Commonwealth Summit being held in Samoa. Although Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that he will not discuss the matter and rejects the idea, he's now frantically backpedalling and seeking a way to deliver reparations in an indirect fashion, under the counter as one might put it. This might be achieved in the form of debt relief for countries in Africa and the Caribbean, combined with providing economic and public health support. It would still be horribly expensive, but it would not entail any public apology from this country for slavery. The amounts being talked of here run into trillions, which is to say millions of millions. So a trillion is 1,000 billion. And it's one tentative estimate has been that Britain might owe £18 trillion, say, which is 18,000 billion pounds, which is such an astronomical sum, that it would mean that this country would have to bankrupt itself to pay out. The idea that Britain should apologise for slavery and then pay compensation is, not to put too fine a point on it, completely mad. And it will only take me a few minutes to explain why. First, a family anecdote. In 1917, during the Battle of Passchendaele in Belgium, 3 German soldiers surrendered to my grandfather. He was duty-bound to take them way back behind the lines and hand them over to be processed as prisoners of war. For various reasons, which, unless you're a soldier during the First World War, would be difficult to explain, he felt disinclined to do so. And so instead he ushered them at gunpoint into a dugout and then chucked in a couple of Mills bombs, killing them all. Mills bombs are hand grenades. So in other words, he murdered all 3 of them. A terrible act, contrary to all the rules of war, of course, but there you are. Here then is the first question to consider. This event took place decades before I was born. To what extent can I be considered culpable for those 3 murders? What is the extent of my guilt for what happened in Belgium in 1917? The only rational answer to that question can surely be that I am not in the slightest degree responsible for what my grandfather chose to do before I was born. Now imagine that I were to be approached by somebody who could prove that he was the great-grandson of one of those murdered Germans. Suppose he showed me irrefutable evidence that the death of his great-grandfather caused terrible harm to his family's future prospects, and that as a consequence they suffered greatly in the aftermath of the First World War and were thrown into poverty from which they were never able to recover. The great-grandson tells me that he is now living in poverty as a consequence of his great-grandfather's death at the hands of my grandfather, and finishes off by suggesting that the only just and equitable action on my part would be to share my money and property with him now to make reparation for the wickedness of my grandfather. I wonder if viewers can guess how I would respond to such a proposal. This case is precisely similar to that of demands being made on us for reparations for slavery. Both cases are utterly absurd, and you would need the logic of Alice in Wonderland to justify them. The astounding thing is that because one of these cases involved black people, nobody dares to laugh it out of court in the way which would be done if any other group of people were to be involved.